Okay, hello, welcome to episode 18 of Should I Make My Family Watch, a podcast where I make my family and friends watch crappy horror and sci-fi movies so you don't have to. I'm your host, Desiree, and joining me today is author Dev Solovey, who is back again for the third time. Welcome back.
Yeah, along with Bonnie, special guest, my little birdie,
Cutest
who I
guest
love.
we've had.
Yeah, she's a diva, so she will be taking up most of our discussion.
She's gonna be the screen grab, I can decide already.
Yeah. Everybody loves a dog. Everybody loves a corgi. Isn't that right, sweetie?
All right,
Yeah,
we are gonna break this down, bro. Are you ready?
I am so fucking ready. I've never been more ready for anything in my life.
So today's piece of crap is Shark Side of the Moon, and
Yes.
it will go down in history as my husband's declared worst piece of shit I have made him watch ever. But
Yeah,
he
you watched the whole thing. Yeah.
watched the whole thing.
See you on the shark side of the moon. It's so good. It's the best film ever made. It's perfect. I have no notes. Every filmmaker and actor and director, you can all go home. We found the perfect film. It's Shark Side of the Moon. The search is over. You can rest. Uh,
I did enjoy it more than I thought I would. Like, I was pleasantly delighted at just like the what the fuckness that kept happening every
yeah,
5 seconds.
I do want to talk about the studio that made it because they have something of a reputation. So, Asylum Studios, if you've ever heard of these folks, they do a lot of like mockbusters, like Transmorphers instead of Transformers, or Snakes on a Train, or stuff like that.
Okay.
And they were the people responsible for Sharknado, to give you an idea of like the caliber of content we're dealing with. Yeah.
Okay.
So what happens is like their business model is built on just mass producing shitty movies. It's kind of like the film studio version of Funko Pops, where they can just kind of like it's the same model over and over again, but you can plug like different elements onto it relatively easily, and that makes it cheap and easy to mass produce, and then therefore profitable. That's their business model. Some unfair labor practices going on, I would say, there as well, but they are fully aware of what they're doing. I tweeted about Shark Side of the Moon after watching it the first time around, and they replied. There's an official Twitter account for the film, 150 followers. They replied to me, and I checked out their profile, and it said the description was a real movie. Really, it's on Tubi, whether you like it or not. So they knew exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. This has been their model since 1997, just making shit ass movies that suck a fat cock. Like that's it's great.
I was in awe of how they managed to, because they would present the clearest, stupidest plot hole, and you're like, there's no way. How are they going to
And
come up with something and then so stupidly they would have an answer, and even the characters in the movie were like, this doesn't make any sense, and it just went anyway, and you're like, all right, just over and over and over, all the way up until the last 10 seconds of the movie, literally.
that was one of the things. So last night I watched this for a second time with my friend Victor, who I will be mentioning a lot because this watch was a lot more fun. They love like B movies and like creature features and stuff, sci-fi and stuff like that. And they were the ones who told me like what Asylum Studios was, and I went like my butt my own bit. Victor, I told them like this film has way more world building than it needs to have. Like for a movie
Mm-hmm.
about sharks on the moon, killer sharks invented by Russian scientists, it has way more world building and scientific accuracy to how sharks actually are than it deserves. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's truly ridiculous, and a lot of, like you said, questions get answered. Like a lot of stuff gets brought up that pays off at the end, and I'm surprised they were able to do this, given that the screenwriters are usually not given a lot to work with. Right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it was. That was an experience.
I would
Oh,
watch it
sorry.
again, but I think my husband would kill me if I put that on the TV again. He did so well until the very end, and that last final scene,
The last, yeah.
like he was done. He was so done. His poor face. Like, he was like, I just need to go to bed. And then I'm scrolling through all the other shark movies that I didn't even know were on Tubi. And I was like, we can watch Sharks in the Corn. We can watch The Shark Exorcism. And he's like,
that's on my list. Yeah.
I want to watch that one. He was like literally going to leave if I put on another shark movie by them. It was absolutely done. So
I have a funny story. Yeah, I have a funny story about the ending, which, no, you know what? Like, I'll bring it up later. Aside from the fact that it's definitely somebody's fetish, I'll bring it up later.
Right.
Yeah, I know the weird side of the internet when I see it. But yeah, how did you want to summarize this? Did you want to take the first half, or did you want to take the back half? I kind of want to take the back half because I have a thing to say about the ending.
I will try to start. I have full transparency. I went to go make a sandwich partway through this movie, and I left my poor husband alone to watch part of it. And I'm like, you got to fill me in when I get back. And then when I got back, he's like, so much bullshit happened. I can't even tell you. And I was like, all right, we're just going to have to fill it in. So my understanding is this began as an experiment 40 years ago in the USSR with two scientists, one of whom is kind of a dipshit and like hassles the other one, therefore jostling a laser, which allowed these experiments to escape, which you find out very quickly are like shark people hybrids.
Yeah, human shark hybrids who are built to survive in any environment, as Akula says later. By the way, the character Akula, who's like this shark girl, Akula is just Russian for shark.
Oh.
So her name's just Shark.
I was wondering. That's an interesting word that I hadn't heard before, but so
yeah, they did surprisingly well at Bonnie, don't you dare. Sorry. They did surprisingly well at like translating things into Russian and Russian dialogue, and I think the guy who plays Sergei has something to do with that because he's actually Russian.
Yeah, so. I've seen him in other movies. I liked his acting in this movie, and I was so like he was able to he carried it for me. Like if they didn't have him in there taking himself very seriously, I don't think it would have worked as well as it did for sure.
Yeah. He played it serious, and then my other favorite guy was the engineer because he was not playing it seriously. He was there for a paycheck. Looked like he was baked, just same expression the entire time, and that made what happened to him far funnier. But we'll get to that.
So the shark people start escaping, and then the two Russian scientists decide that the only way they can keep them from getting to the oceans is to lead them onto a spacecraft that looked like it was made of kitchen tiles. Or Legos, maybe?
It looked like it was made of bricks. Brick spaceship.
Yeah, similar. And I was trying to figure out how that would work. So they lead them onto the spaceship, and then they launch to the moon, I guess. And then there was a gap. So I'm not sure if they crash landed on the moon, because then it cuts to 40 years later with an American crew ready to go to the moon for some sort of science experiment, and for absolutely zero reason they get some sort of alternate swapped in at the last minute.
Yeah, probably to do with one of the cast members quitting. But I do want to bring one thing in here. So while I was watching this with Victor, the most insane thing happened. So we would riff on it, right? And they would make a joke, and fully just intending to joke, like not actually serious, that would somehow predict what happened next in the movie. This happened 4 times. And this happened twice right at the beginning in the scene you're talking about. One where they brought up like volcanoes, and Victor said like, yeah, you know how they have volcanoes on the moon. And then they're like, watch, they're going to like walk into a volcano in the moon. I'm like, dude, that does happen. And then like within the same span of a couple of minutes, they brought up like, watch, there's gonna be like a city full of sharks, like Sharkcinatti or something. I'm like, Victor, you can't keep predicting what's happening in this film just by making jokes.
You should have had him write it all down.
Yeah, I did. There was a third one that I couldn't remember. The fourth one we'll get to, but yeah.
Okay, so the crew launches, and for some reason, their spaceship gets the trajectory altered, and then they're sort of forced into a crash landing on the dark side of the moon, where they don't have communications back with NASA,
Right.
is my understanding, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I figured. And also, like, maybe it's just because I'm like the kind of person who focuses on dialogue before anything else. The dialogue leading up to this has so much filler in it and so much like technobabble, you know. And I think that was just the writers trying to fill time because of
Well,
the terrible schedules that they have to work on and the fact that they have to stay within a very tight budget. That's kind of
mm-hmm,
how I that. It's just like none of this makes sense at all. And yet elements of it get brought up later. They bring up the volcanoes, they bring up
mm-hmm.
the algae, they bring up all this sort of stuff. Like I said, way too much world building for a film that did not deserve it.
All of their acronyms end up being utilized later as well, like very specific, even ones they just mentioned once. I did feel like the banter back and forth between the actual crew was really shitty, and probably not anybody's fault. Just like it was
No.
pointless. It was just to get them to the part
Yeah.
where you get to see what's on the moon, which so they crash land on the moon. They're a couple of them are exploring in their spacesuits, and then they run into a man who just has like hospital things up his
Yeah. Like
nose.
oxygen feed and a
Yeah.
looking hood.
And then a girl with nothing on, and they're like, how is he breathing on that? I mean, there was so many questions immediately that obviously the characters in the movie had the same questions, and they're just like, yeah, just keep going. Doesn't matter. It's
Yeah,
not important right now.
I know. This part fucked me up so much because like I knew it was the Russian scientist who piloted that shuttle with all the
Mm-hmm.
sharks. It was him, right? So I'm thinking like, who's the girl? Like obviously she's shorter than him. I think the visual language is here is that she's his daughter, and it like slowly
Mm-hmm.
dawns on me. And as I'm watching, I'm like, "Yo, did you fuck a shark? Yo, did you fuck a shark?"
Like that's the only option presented.
I know. And then later, finally, he says, "This is my daughter. This is my daughter. She's adopted." Like he clarifies
Yeah,
that for the viewer because they knew.
that's what my husband was saying. The same thing. He's like, did he sleep with the sharks? And I was like, we're gonna have to wait to find out. Clearly,
They
this
should
is
have committed. They should have just committed to him being a shark fucker. Like they should have just been like, "Yeah, that's my daughter. I had an affair with Selah or whatever her name is, Selena Selah." Uh, they should have committed.
uh
Selah
yeah,
was
I don't.
the leader of the sharks.
That's right. There was the Tsarina, and then there was, yeah. So there was like two kind of head shark. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. I should point out that right before they met the Russian scientist and his adopted daughter, there was, you could see the fin in the dirt, in the moon dirt, and it
Oh
was like,
yeah,
"Meh, shark attack," and they just stand there staring at it, and then
you
it
know how
falls into
sharks can
some,
swim in dirt. You know, sharks swim under dirt. Uh, you know
yeah,
how it is. Uh,
and then
yeah,
it
and then
like some booby
uh,
trap.
yeah. And then their engineer, the other guy who's like the worst actor on the crew, he gets
Yeah,
kidnapped. Yeah,
that's
and they
right.
question him because they want the location of the ship. They take him. The sharks take him back to their shark lair, which is a shark city inside of a volcano.
Which sounds way cool. Like that's pretty rad.
Yeah, not gonna lie, like they did spend time on that one. I think they knew that like that was one of the things they would have to like actually build models for. Interesting though, because it runs on Death Star rules where like it's heavily guarded everywhere except for one very obvious entrance in the back. Uh,
Right.
fascinating. But yeah, I
Um,
think
that's got to be halfway.
yeah, I reckon that is. I reckon that is because then and like there's a lot of exposition in this film, a lot of world building because they go back to Sergei's hideout and he just answers all of the viewers' questions about why he's able to breathe and why he's still alive and all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
We get some answers about Akula. We find out Sergei's a John Elton fan, uh, and then this is where they're like, we have to rescue our crew. And Akula gives them like the sort of guidance on how to break into the compound to get Liam back. In the meantime, they find out that like electromagnetic signals will draw the sharks, will attract them, which I thought was just weird sci-fi bullshit. That's actually true. Yeah, that the sense that they have on their nose. I knew they had like an extra sense on their snoot, but I couldn't remember what it was. But yeah, so that's a real thing. What is it? Automatic parthenogenesis is also a real thing sharks do.
I didn't know that one as much. I have heard that term, but
I didn't know
like
either.
that.
Yeah, Victor, like I said, Shark Week kid, knows a lot about sharks. Just like rattled off a lot of this information to me. So the captain has to send a radio signal back to her ship telling them not to use the radio. But of course, it comes back distorted. So they immediately respond to her and draw the sharks right to them. The one guy gets killed in possibly the funniest way in this film, where they're just kind of like trudging along and he's like right behind her. And then the shark just flies in and kills.
Yeah. Or they like get like karate chopped in half a lot.
Yeah. I mentioned fetish because there's like two scenes, but like one of them is definitely this one where like it ends with that girl getting killed when a shark literally eats her from behind. Like, I'm sorry, no, I know what you did there. I know this film was made by monster fuckers, which I know because I know my people. All right, I know what you did. You think you can hide it? You can't. I know what that was about. But yeah, I remember watching that and be like, oh, okay, nope, yeah, this is bad. Don't like that. Yeah, so then it cuts back to the crew as they're breaking into the compound. They fight some sharks. I guess they found this sort of neat exploit hack to where if they get the sharks on their back, the sharks freeze, which is like a real thing with sharks. If you flip them upside down, they just like don't know what to do. Yeah, so I think, do they get captured? I'm not sure what happens at that point. It's kind of a mess, but that's where they meet Tsarina Sela. I think the name is Sela. Yeah, it's Sela. So they meet her. There was a scene before where like she and the other shark who Victor and I started calling Snoo Snoo because she looked like that one Amazon from Futurama. Anyway.
Oh yeah, you're right. With the big coconut looking bra.
Yeah. When they text, yeah. By the way, there's shark titties in this, in case you were wondering.
Yeah, exactly.
They were questioning the engineer, and they're like, "Where's the ship?" And Snoo Snoo bites his leg off in a very funny way, and he says like, "All right, I'll give you the location if you promise not to hurt them." And Sayla's like, "Yeah, pinky promise, whatever." And she pulls out like fucking an Elder Scroll or something, and then he like signs it. I don't know. And yeah, that's when we were that like. So I originally learned about this from my friend Molly, and they were telling me when they saw shark titties, they had to like pause and get up and take a walk because they were so angry.
I died. I was like hiss laughing. I was dying in the chair, and my husband is like just can't. He's just dying with me at me, and I'm like, this is the best thing I have seen. Like a shark in a bra with like full blown,
like Amazon. Yeah, it was so much. Her and Serena Sela both. I remember towards the beginning, Victor noticed that like it's funny how all the male sharks are wearing shorts to cover up and I was just like, wait until you see what the female sharks wear. This film was made by monster fuckers. Anyway, so yeah, they come in and they interrogate, and like once they come in, Victor like had their reaction, and then we were both like, I think at some point we started chanting like shark titties, shark titties. But yeah, so they meet Serena Sela, and she has the worst model out of all the sharks. She has the worst looking model. She's so gross looking.
Yeah.
The way she talks is like genuinely creepy. It's like really uncanny valley in a way that's very unpleasant. She looks like she's based on a mako shark, which is a very slim kind of shark. So that might be why they made her skinny, but she looked like a skeleton. Like, oh, it was bad. The sharks all speak Russian. They can speak. The Serena Sela and a couple of the higher ups can speak English, though. Apparently, most of them just speak Russian or growls, and they have their own written language, which is a mix of Cyrillic and Chinese. Like, again, too much world building. way too much world building at this point.
We don't
Like they
need
don't.
that.
Yeah, none of this was necessary. Like we just wanted it. It was a film about sharks on the moon. You didn't have to do such a high concept thing, but they did anyway, and I admire that. But yeah, so hold on. I did actually take like on paper this time because I hate when I'm like scrolling through. Oh yeah, okay. So I think at this point they have to. They're like going through the compound and they find a bunch of shark eggs. And this one guy on the crew goes like, "We got to destroy these eggs so they don't get to Earth and take over the Earth." And this is where the film decides it would be a great idea to introduce a pro-life argument. Uh, in the weirdest
This is
context
the
I've
part I
ever
was
seen.
making a sandwich for, so I got none of this
Okay,
part.
yeah. So they go into this room. And there's like hundreds of shark eggs, and there's all these horrible looking little shark fetuses wriggling around in them. And this one guy goes like, "We got to destroy them, or they're gonna come to Earth and take over the Earth." And Akula, the shark girl, like doubles back and hisses at him. She's like, "They're innocent children. How dare you?" And I'm just like, okay. I mean, you want to give this gal depth, then sure, fine, but it had to be like a pro-life argument, like a fetus is a living thing. Is that the point you wanted to make? I mean, okay, fine. And then it gets worse because like there's only two black people on the cast, and the one who's with them most of the time is the one who ends up being racist to her. Like, yeah, make the one black guy the racist. Like,
That's a good point. I did not put that together. I just thought he was just kind of being a dick, and I thought that was the point of his character, maybe
yeah,
to be like the edgy asshole.
yeah.
But
But then
that's
there
a good
was
point.
like more scenes where he was like specifically vicious, specifically towards sharks. You know what I mean? I was
Hmm.
just like, I could see what they were going for there, and I'm just like, that really sucks. Maybe don't do that next time. Yeah, this film is problematic. It's fair warning. I highly encourage anyone watching this to watch this film. It's an experience you won't forget. You'll either
Yeah,
hate it or love it. I recommend smoking a bowl first, though. Don't go into this sober.
I can agree. It would have been
Yeah,
much
it's
more
one of those
enjoyable.
films. Yeah, it's one of those ones you're supposed to yell at the screen while you're watching it. You're supposed to be like riffing on it. It's not really like a film you take seriously. Um, but yeah, so I mean, at that point, they kind of make it out of the compound. A couple of people died. They make it back to their ship, where the two remaining crew members have somehow managed to kill one of these giant shark creatures using only a wrench and a broomstick. Cool, good job. They die pretty much immediately because the sharks take over the ship, and a lot of people get killed in that scene. I think that's the scene too where the engineer, my favorite guy, tries to sacrifice himself to save everybody. Um, because he was the one who got his leg bitten off, and
Yeah,
he felt like responsible because he showed the sharks their location or whatever. So he decides to sacrifice himself in possibly the funniest way anyone in any film has ever done so. Um, he grabs a fire extinguisher
yeah,
and
that's right.
yeah, he puts it between his legs and crotch rockets out of the fucking ship and draws the sharks away. And there's these two like brutish sharks, and one of them just runs up and swats him out of the air. And so, and it didn't even do anything because they lost the ship anyway. Serena Sela took it over, and
Yeah,
yeah. So like, what was the fucking point? But it gets better. So I forgot to mention it, but there was an area in here. I think it was like right after they got out of the cave with all the shark fetuses in it, where Victor says, uh, jokingly, fully believing he's just riffing, I'm waiting for Akula to come out and just say that she's pregnant. And I
oh
start
no.
cracking up. I completely deflate. I can't even breathe at this point. And Victor is like, he mentions like automatic parthenogenesis. And finally, when I catch my breath, I'm like, Victor, you can't keep predicting this film. And they were like, oh my God, you're kidding. No. So we'll get to that, viewers, listeners. Just hold up on that one. But yeah, so the ship gets taken over by Serena Sela. She kind of like crashes out of it somehow. I forget how. It's kind of a blur. And so the Sergei, the Russian guy, he's still got his ship, which is somehow still operational, even though he's never left the moon in all 40, 60 years of being on it.
Right.
So he decides, yeah, he wants to, but like it'll kill him if he launches it, I guess. So he wants to sacrifice himself so that his daughter, adopted daughter, Akula, can get to Earth. And the remaining people who at this point are the one racist black guy and the commander. And they're the only ones that make it off of the moon. And there's a lot of like very badly animated fight scenes and reused footage up until this point. They finally make it to Earth. Sergei has given Akula some kind of inflatable raft, and they land on that. They're all happy to have gotten there, and then Akula experiences automatic parthenogenesis and has birth, just like on contact with the Earth. Just gives
Yep.
birth to an ugly fucking ass baby shark that's so gross.
Yes.
It's so nasty looking. And yeah, even though the cast is like, oh, it's kind of cute, it's not. It's fucking not. It's so
You
bad.
know,
And then she just has like some sort of maternal freak out and says like, I gotta protect my babies, and she jumps in the water, and then a whole bunch of them just pop up around the boat, and it ends with the commander saying, "Oh fuck," and I mean it gets cut off, but you know, and that's the end of the film. It's baffling.
I was a little disappointed that I ended up being surprised by the very, very ending because I did not think they were going to go there. And then they did.
And they did, yep.
Yeah. And then I was like, why didn't I see that? I was really mad at myself. But those little
I
babe,
forgot.
like
I
that
forgot
was
something. I
what?
forgot something that's important to me. The engineer, he didn't die. He sacrificed himself. He somehow came back, knocked out one of the sharks, and they're all surprised that he's alive. And then he immediately gets killed.
Right.
I love that he comes back around because he's the one guy who he was like baked on set. And he was just like, I'm here for a check. I got bills to pay. Like I don't know. Anyway,
I
yeah,
felt like
they
that was most the crew in that there was the ones that stayed on the ship were very like bland to
yeah,
watch.
yeah, they were. And it's interesting because sometimes like I was reading the Wikipedia page for the Asylum Studio, and like apparently for Sharknado, and I have to assume many of their other films, some of these scripts include like self-aware humor and stuff like that, and the execs will tell people to cut those out of the script. So like anything to make it funnier gets cut out because their business model is not built on making good movies. If they make a good movie, their studio fails. So they have to make bad movies.
I don't understand how that works.
It's basically they make a movie for just exactly less than how much it's projected to make. Like just they based on their sales, which their sales are more or less the same because they do these direct to movie or direct to DVD kind of stuff. So long as they can make a certain number of movies that make a certain profit margin, then and appeal to certain markets. There might be certain studios that are looking for specific things, and so they'll make a
Okay.
movie that's tailored to whatever that studio is looking for. It's basically the film version of search engine optimization. It's kind of what it is. It's like because they
Okay.
know people will watch a film called Shark Side of the Moon, the way they know people will watch a film called Sharknado, right? Like like they know it's bad. They fully know that, and they'll admit to it openly, right? I think one of the quotes from like one of the founders was something like in board meetings they still have conversations about how to exploit the success of Sharknado. Like that's the actual word he used. Or like the way they pick actors is they're like, we can't go after Johnny Depp, we know that, but we can go after his cousin. You know, most of the people who come here are just here for a paycheck, and the ones who are regulars have made peace with what they're doing. Actual words. So
I feel
they
like
know
I
what they're
saw that. Yeah.
yeah, no, they know what they're doing. But yeah, it's a piece of shit on purpose, and that's what fascinates me about it.
Okay, so what's your rating then? What are you giving this one?
See, that's a tough question because I've mentioned before that I feel like the entertainment factor uh, is something that lessens my rating, right? And additionally, if you look at it from, unfortunately, a creative integrity standpoint, they had a goal that they set out to do and accomplished it flawlessly. Like
Mm-hmm.
they went out there with the goal to tell a story about a bad movie about sharks on the moon. And they achieved exactly that. And every choice that they made creatively served that goal. So
Mm-hmm.
technically speaking, it's a good movie. Here's the thing. Their intention was to make a bad movie, and they succeeded
Right.
at that. So I think the fairest rating I could give it is 5 out of 5. I think it's the worst pile of shit I've ever seen in my life.
Okay. So I agree with all of those points, and that is the reason I would give it a 1 out of 5. Only a
That's
little
fair.
bit shitty. Because I have every intention of watching this movie again, not with my husband, because I think he would probably divorce me if I did, but my 12-year-old, whether she wants to or not, is going to
Oh,
have
yeah.
to witness this. She doesn't know
No,
yet,
that's
but
just
it's
it. Like
happening.
the entire time I was watching this, I was getting like mad Spy Kids vibe. I was like, if I was 10 years old, I would think this is peak cinema. Like I would love this if I was 10 years old. So like, yeah, I'm willing to say it's a good movie, technically speaking. And it's weird to have to say that about Shark Side of
Yeah,
the Moon, but
it is both 1 and 5 at the same
yeah,
time. It
yeah,
transcended the scale into something on its own entirely.
yeah. It broke the scale.
It did, yes. I think we need to have a place for movies that are not able to be rated like that because it was unbelievably and indescribably terrible, but it was not inaccurate necessarily. I mean, it
Mhm.
was, but it was accurate in everything it presented, even though it was totally like irresponsibly unbelievable.
Yeah, and the script was tight too. The world building,
Yeah.
it was only ever like it all had a purpose. Every sort of science element that got brought up more or less wrapped around to like being
Hmm.
brought back in. There were scientific inaccuracies,
Hmm.
obviously, but there were no like yeah, the script was like way tighter. Most of it was way tighter than it needed to be, especially for the budget that these people are working on, and the fact that there's probably some unfair labor practices going on there. Like, I'm surprised they managed to churn something like this out. And if Asylum's success as a studio, nearly 30 years now, is anything to go by, it's a repeated success. They continue to do this. So, yeah, it's fascinating how something can be technically very good from like a creative integrity standpoint, but in terms of actual quality, suck
Very
so bad.
bad.
Yeah.
Are they the same people that did the Sharks and the Corn one? Sharks of the
I
Corn or
don't
whatever it
think
is?
so, but I don't think so. But I know the screenwriter for Shark Side of the Moon also did Sharktopus, and
Okay,
the
I
direct.
just watched the preview for that one.
Yeah, yeah. So they've done like a whole series of shark movies, probably again due to the success of Sharknado, which if I don't know who wouldn't be aware of that, but listener, if you are not aware of that, it's an Asylum film that went viral several years ago and has since spawned 5 spin-offs. So I think Asylum found their moneymaker with shark movies. So,
I watched the first one, and I think it was before a time when I could really appreciate the quality of. I thought it was supposed to be like
I've never
the
seen
kind of
it.
thing. Okay, well, the first one sucks. It wasn't enjoyable to me, but I don't like the people they picked. So that's probably just my issue. I tried to watch the subsequent ones, got 10 minutes into the second one, and decided I can never watch the whole franchise ever again. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Tara Reid is in it.
She is? I have
I
no idea.
feel like now I gotta look it up. I am 90% sure she is in the first one and 5 seconds of the second one.
Hmm,
So
cool.
not as
Yeah,
enjoyable as this one, but also not as crazy, I think. I think it is much crazier to have sharks on the moon than it is to have sharks in
yeah.
a tornado.
yeah, the fact that it is so much more insane kind of helps to suspend the disbelief because you know what you're getting into. Like the description on Tubi is literally just like decades ago, the Soviets created unkillable sharks and sent them to the moon. Like
Mm,
that's the log line, right? And so like you know what you're getting into when you watch it. It's like watching Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Like you know what's going on here. Whereas with Sharknado, we have more of a frame of reference for the reality of it, like because it occurs on Earth. Whereas the
mhm.
moon, it could be anything. You know, I've never been there, right? Most people haven't. So, it's absurd enough that you're more willing to suspend your disbelief. There's a fine line that you have to tread when you're doing bizarro fiction or bizarre concepts like that. If you make it too real, it stops being good. If that makes any sense. There's like an uncanny valley, you know?
Yeah, I could agree with that. I didn't, I never really thought about Bizarro being like what that would kind of fall under. I haven't read
I mean,
any,
it's
so I
bizarre. It's weird. So
that it is. Yes. If you ever want to see a human-looking woman popping out baby shark creatures, like this is your jam.
yeah, with some of the worst sound effects. Holy Lord. I love too how like whenever they were fighting the sharks, they couldn't actually touch the sharks because the type of VFX they were using were from fucking 70s. I don't know, and
Mhm.
so they had to just do like clever shots where they look away from the shark and it's somebody like swinging a spear because they had to use spears for some reason, and then they switch back to a copied and pasted clip of one of the sharks like rearing up or whatever,
Mhm.
like, but there was rarely ever any actual contact and they couldn't do actual contact most of the time because when they did it would look awful. So they were sparing with it.
I think they also, I don't know if you noticed this, they people tried to do like slow motion movements
Yes,
to
yeah,
emphasize
oh my
the
God.
lack of gravity, but the
Yeah,
sharks didn't do that. Just the
no, they
people.
didn't. Yeah, and even then the people weren't always, they didn't keep up with it 100% of the
No,
time. Like when
they
they knew
forget.
it was supposed to be, the director told them, all right, pretend you're walking on the moon. They just do like little hops
Hmm.
while they were stepping. But then once there's like a chase scene going on, they're just running like normal. I also noticed that like the perspective was off, like the horizon line for the moon was like above where it should have been. It was like the wrong tilt. It was really, it
That part was strange, but I don't think they could have done it any better and or differently with what they had.
yeah, no, that the bad effects also add to it. Because here's the thing, like, the people who are credited as like the visual effects directors have worked on actually good movies. One of them worked on San Andreas, which has actually good special effects, from what I've seen
I haven't
anyway.
seen that.
I haven't seen the movie, but like the special effects in that movie are definitely worlds better than this one. So this was again an intentional choice, and I think if they had made it
Hmm.
any more realistic, which they had the capability to do, it would have been worse. You know, they knew kind of who the audience is. They know what Asylum makes. They they know that the worse effects they can make, the more enjoyable the watch is going to be. And so they did all of this on purpose. And that's a really good creative choice. Like they
Also
didn't have
really
to,
bad.
yeah, they didn't have to make it this bad, but they did anyway because they knew that's what the subject matter warranted. Again, te- bad, but technically good.
Yeah.
Weird
Yeah,
medium
I
that this.
this is one that's gonna like stick into me for a while. And perfect example. This morning seems completely unrelated, but since I watched those little shark babies, like
Uh,
they're creepy, right? They're freaky.
yeah,
This
super.
morning, my dogs had something cornered up in a tree, and it was
Uh,
5:30 in the morning, pitch black outside. I go out there, I don't see anything, so I'm standing under the tree looking, and I see a tiny hand come down out of the tree. And
oh
my
my
first thought was, there's a fucking baby in this tree. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like the gray shark baby things.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, so first thought, and then it turns out it's a baby raccoon. Much
Uh,
cuter. But for a second, I was like, you got to be fucking shitting me. Like, like, what is this? And I had that flash. And then I was like, are you kidding? Like, what is wrong with me? Nothing
this
about this was scary, but
Yeah, no, it's stuck in my head too. I'm gonna take the listener behind the scenes a little bit because the first time I watched this must have been about a month ago, and I messaged you about it
Yes.
because it all actually started with the episode that Zach was on for Alone in the Dark. I decided
Mm.
to watch that film too, and I was texting Molly about it, and they brought up Shark Side of the Moon, and I was like, well, I can't not watch it with a title like that. I got to see what this is about. And so I messaged you, and I was like, here's this. This is what I'm doing. And the review that I gave you the first time I watched it, and the review that I also gave Victor, which convinced them to want to watch it with me, was I have never laughed so hard at something that made me feel like I was cutting an onion. It was
Yeah.
just, yeah, and then I also said, because
Yeah.
we talked about like boobs in movies a lot, like the other two episodes I've been on, I said, like, there's titties in this film, and they're not where you think they
Yeah, that's right. You
are.
did say that. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'm missing like I cannot accurately describe this film.
No, it's very hard to describe. There's also the one of the fascinating things about its page on Rotten Tomatoes. It does not have a critic rating. Last time I checked, the audience
Oh.
rating is 70%, um, but it used to be 69%, which I know because the Shark Side of the Moon Twitter account tweeted a screenshot of it and said nice. So
So funny. That's
yeah, no, these
clever.
people know exactly what they're doing. I tweeted at the Flophouse, which is another bad movie podcast. I was like, you guys got to see this movie. And that's the one that Shark Side of the Moon replied to. They're like, how do we get you to do it? Like, we want you to cover it too. So they knew what they were doing with this film, and they accomplished it. And it's just, I feel like you have to update your rating scale, where instead of just 1 to 5, it's 1 to 5 or Shark Side of the Moon. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, I agree.
New category.
1,000%. And I'm gonna write it in or something because I don't even know. Like it's in a league all of its own there. I definitely recommend other people to go watch this, if only to feel the same conflicting feelings that I'm having right now as I think about it again, and as I've thought about it all day at work, and as I was watching it.
And
So
as I've been thinking about it for a whole fucking month now. But yeah, I think also it kind of helps that we're both writers because like we know. I mean, I've never written a screenplay, but like I know how storytelling works, and so that's kind of why we're able to tell that all of these choices are intentional. I feel like somebody else who's not a writer might have a different perspective on it, and I'm eager to see what that person has to say because they might pick up on other things that I haven't picked up on, right? So yeah, it's just please watch this film. It's an experience you won't forget. Understand that you're not supposed to take it seriously too.
and I don't even think you're supposed to enjoy it, honestly.
No,
Sorry, I have to
again,
journey to let my dogs in.
yeah, it's definitely one of them that like you're supposed to be angry and yell at the screen. That's kind of the Silent Hill brand. Yeah, it's a
Totally done.
riffing movie. It's like how you're supposed to do with The Room. Like The Room is only fun to watch when you're doing that, like when you're yelling at the screen and riffing on it. So,
Go lay down, please.
yeah, it's not for film students.
No,
I mean, maybe it is
you won't.
actually. Then there might be some things you could learn from it. I don't know.
You won't be writing your essays on this one.
Yeah, do your thesis paper.
Ah,
Sharks on the Moon.
go away, go away, go away. Okay, so now we're going to do things a little bit different as we. Sorry, I'm about to regret this choice. Stop. Thank you. Stop.
It's okay.
Stop,
Everybody
please.
loves dogs.
Okay, well, she's about to. Guys, don't worry, I'll cut this part out. Can we stop, please? Excuse me.
If you're not going to cut out Bonnie, then you can't cut out those two.
They've made many an appearance. Okay, what I was going to say, excuse me.
They're breathing on the mic. Well,
Good Lord. Okay, they're gonna start fighting literally right next to me because they know I'm doing something. That's amazing. Anyway, what I was going to say is we are going to switch things around, and you are going to interview me for these questions that I'm not prepared to answer. Okay. No, I don't. Where was I? I didn't pause it. Son of a bitch. Okay, we're doing things backwards. You're going to interview me because you are going to be my assistant fill-in, swap-in host of the show so I can skittle on out for a little bit and get some other fun
Yeah,
people in.
yeah, life gets busy and stuff like that. So I'll be filling in probably starting in October, uh, maybe through November, depending on how many I get recorded. Because November is Nano month, so that's gonna be like my full focus. But yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So fill in for a while, a little bit of a season break, then have you come back. When things chill out. I say that, but I'm very busy too. So oh, that's a mess. But yeah, so we're going to turn it around, and I'm going to be interviewing Desiree, one of my favorite authors of this year. I'm not joking about that, by the way. I really enjoyed Midnight Mother. It was a really
Oh,
nice
thank
read.
you.
Yeah, yeah. I tried to get my mom to read it, but I don't think she saw that I mentioned her on Facebook. I think she might have missed the notification. Um, but yeah, so uh, for these questions, the first one is, what is your favorite shitty movie, and tell us what you love about it.
Mine changes month to month. I can never stick with one favorite, but my favorite shitty movie of this month is Blade, the trilogy, all of them.
All of them, all right.
All of them, because they take themselves so seriously that it just tickles me inside. I would say I feel like that's also a little bit too high of caliber because well, there's the shitty movies like Shark Side of the Moon that are a little more tongue in cheek, I think.
Mhm.
So obviously the classics are like the Army of Darkness and those kind,
Yeah.
but I can't pick one favorite because I love so many.
Well, let's phrase it differently then. What movie made you decide to start this podcast, or what made you decide to start this podcast? If not a
Um,
movie, then something general.
the because I've been saying I was going to do this for a few years. For the past probably 5 years, my husband and my children have had a rule that when I get to pick a movie, it has to be above 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, or we're not allowed to watch it.
That's
Because
generous.
I'm notorious for picking like complete pieces of shit and everybody is miserable except for me and I'm just like so into it and loving and I'm like, why aren't you guys laughing, this is great, and nobody's having a good time but me. So they
Yep.
instituted the rule and I was like, we're gonna have to do something about this because I make my husband Blaine watch pretty much all of these with me, and
Uh,
most of the time if he hates it he'll just go to sleep. So that's the
not
easy
this
way out.
time.
No.
Yeah. Um, it's so funny. Like part of the reason I was like so eager to be a guest on your show the first time around is because this is the kind of thing I do, but with like internet stuff or fan fiction. I love like the weird bad stuff. Like I love My Immortal or things like that. Or yeah, like I did a whole podcast about it last year. So like yeah, like I enjoy like weird niche internet stuff or weird niche indie movies because they're different from what I'm so used to. I feel like I got, especially during the Marvel decade, I got like blasted with like lots of high budget stuff. And then looking back on the fact that they're like not actually great movies, it's just kind of like,
Mm.
if the mainstream stuff isn't that good, then what's the point of continuing to watch the same thing over and over again? So that's, I don't know. I am an appreciator of weird, shitty stuff as well.
It's also just more interesting, like,
Yeah,
to know
yeah.
that you have a weird idea in your head of something that you're never gonna write. Somebody else did it. Like, they took that weird idea and they went with it all the way. And sometimes it's fun to see why we don't wanna do that.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot to be learned from Uwe Boll's mistakes, if nothing
Oh
else.
god. Don't have it in me to watch that sequel yet. So I hope that's our you're not gonna do that one with Zach, are you? The
Uh,
sequel?
we were
Alone
thinking
in
of
the
doing
Dark
Blood
too.
Rain, actually. Blood Rain.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's another one of
I
his.
have already seen that one, so
Okay, all right. I take it we're in for a treat then.
yes, absolutely.
All right. What is the worst movie you've ever seen? Just any
I
movie
don't
you hate.
movie I hate, I can tell you right now, and everyone's gonna hate me for this, is Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
All right.
It is my least favorite horror movie. I've seen, though I watch it every year because my husband likes that one, and it is a cult classic. But I hate it.
Yeah.
I don't
fair.
like their makeup. I don't like the script. I don't like anything about it, and I like hate watch it every single year because everybody loves it. And I one of these times I'm hoping it will dawn on me and I'll understand why.
Maybe one day, maybe it won't. What is it
Nope.
specifically that you hate about it? Do you know, or is it just like the vibes are so rancid you can't stand it?
I think it's like I don't have a thing for clowns. I don't care about that, but something about the creatures' attitudes and makeup combined makes me I think it's because I don't like things that are mean for no reason, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Same reason I don't like the Terrifier ones because there's no like reason for it that makes sense to me, and I
Yeah.
don't like that.
It's just a race that's evil for no reason, kind of like that.
Yeah, I don't like that. There needs to be a reason, some sort of catalyst to whatever is happening, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that for real. And that is a point of discourse in a lot of other things too. Like I know it's a point of discourse in fantasy. Which is why I brought up the orcs actually. So what kind of horror genre is your favorite and what is your favorite way to get it?
Well, obviously I like sharks. I think it depends on if you're talking movies or books. When it comes to horror books, I am definitely new to reading the splatterpunk genre. That's not normally what I read, but I will read any sort of horror. Like, unless it's got, I don't care for the, what is it, dark romance where it's like smut and horror is not my jam necessarily. Stay away from those,
Yeah.
but.
That's fair. Yeah, I think the book that made me the most mad was a dark romance book, but it was also a reimagining of Peter Pan. It was so awful. I'm not going to mention who the author is. It would be rude of me, but especially because they are an indie author. Make your money, fine, whatever, good for you. But it was so, for a book written by a woman with a lot to say about feminism, it was profoundly sexist. So yeah, I kind of stay away from the dark romance genre because I know there's some problematic stuff in there, and unless it's handled well, it really pisses me off. So I feel you there. I'm like trying to validate what you're saying.
I tend, so I would say broadly, I enjoy all horror. I have to take splatterpunk and the more gory stuff in small doses just because I trained in the medical field. And so it gets very real for me in some gross aspects. I definitely will take horror in any form it comes. Movies, audio books, regular paperback, articles, doesn't matter. Art.
So what kind of horror movies are your favorites then, usually?
I tend to go for any eco horrors I can find. Any creature features that aren't like super trashy looking, like that have a unique spin. I love a weird idea. I want someone to give me something that I haven't considered before. And I'm like, oh, even if I didn't enjoy it, if it was a weird take on something, I definitely want to read it, see it, whatever.
Yeah, I feel the same. Like I said, Victor has a lot of like creature features that they talked about like after we watched Shark Side of the Moon. One of them they mentioned that I desperately want to watch is Gonjosaurus Rex. It's a dinosaur that eats weed. That's
yes,
very funny, very on brand for me. So I have to check that out. But yeah, creature features. I'm like, I dig that. I vibe with that. What is the next question on this list? What would you like to see more of in horror? What topics or more focus do you think are kind of an untapped market? Yeah.
And from a personal standpoint, I enjoy horror books that don't have a like centering in on relationships, if that makes sense. Like a relationship can be a part of the story, but it doesn't need to be solely what drives the whole book, especially in horror. So I feel like there should be, especially when they're written from like a female character's perspective.
Yeah.
So
You mean specifically like a romantic relationship, right?
yeah. I guess I need to think about that for a second. I feel like if someone's going to write a horror book about a female main character, generally a romantic relationship becomes the center point of the story, even if it's not intended. And I
Yeah.
enjoy people trying to write the female lead character who is strong, or at least can, function without having the crutch of another person or relationship. I think it's more
Yeah.
interesting.
No, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me, actually. That's a frustration that I've had for a long time, possibly for different reasons. Just as someone who, like, growing up had a lot of friends who were the opposite gender for me, and I still kind of do. And a lot of people, like, assumed that we were just going to end up dating, but we weren't. We were just friends. It was just this sort of, like, heteronormative thing where I got, like, pushed together with people when that was not the vibe. It
Mm-hmm.
got really, really annoying, and I always felt like, because you always see it in movies, like you were just talking about,
Mm-hmm.
like you always see it in movies that anytime there's a hot girl and a hot guy in a movie, they end up together by the end of it, and it always felt so forced and unnatural, and it like pissed me off because that what I was seeing was affecting my reality in ways that were really fucking toxic and annoying. So like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I totally vibe with that. I'd love to see more of like different kinds of relationships explored, maybe platonic
Yes,
relationships. Yeah, or
exactly.
Midnight Mother does that. It explores generational trauma, and I thought it did so in a really interesting way. I identified quite a lot with Letta. I think she's a really compelling main character. I really enjoy her. Did I pronounce that right, Letta, or is it Lita?
Lita.
Lita. Okay, I've been pronouncing it wrong this whole fucking time.
It's in your brain, man. You can say it however you want.
Yeah, that's fair. I had that discussion with somebody about Death Note because I read the manga first, and so I pronounced all the names wrong because I didn't know how to pronounce Japanese names at the time. It's just the reality. That's when, if we're talking about movies that we hate, Death Note 2017. I should have thought of that the first time you interviewed me, asking about the worst movie I've ever seen. That was it. Death Note 2017. I have a lot of beef with that movie. Anyway,
Is that the one that was out in the theaters?
it was a Netflix original.
Okay,
I
yeah.
have a funny story with the script, but I feel like I should save it for a potential episode to cover. But
Okay.
there's some wild shit behind the script of that movie. Anyway, so where can people find your work? What's your social media? You have a website, Amazon, Linktree, anything like that?
That's kind of a cheater question for me because I have it on. I have all the crap on everything. Amazon seems to be the only place anybody can find anybody's book nowadays, which is a real big bummer. Like
Yeah,
corporate monopoly shutting down small presses, and so Amazon, and then sometimes the Unveiling Nightmares website works, and you can sort of find links on there, but sometimes it doesn't. So
I always thought it was
Amazon.
mostly just blogs, and then all the books got posted to Godless. That's what I
Um,
thought.
Yeah, you're mostly right. It does have a couple free ones on there, or it did, but then there was some issues with it not working. So Amazon, but if you're looking like Unveiling Nightmares is supposed to be the sort of umbrella for that.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Um, all right, what have you read or watched over the last week that is not shitty?
Shark Side of the Moon. uh, that's that is what is in my brain for what we have watched. Though I did rewatch The Revenant, which I think is a pretty good movie. Not horror though. I haven't really had time to watch much else. I started reading 3 different books this week. I've got The House That Echoed Madness by Destiny Pfeiffer. I'm gonna fuck up her name again. Who's an Unveiling Nightmares author who was just on a little bit ago. I just finished up Minotaur by J.M. Fickling, which is like a back rooms sort of horror, but also a take on like hell and redemption. It was interesting. Interesting read. And then I also just started The Devil's Right by Dan Schrader. So, and Incursion by Blake Crouch on Audible. I have too much going on at one time. That's probably why I can't remember anything, because I have like 5 books happening, but all of
I wish
those.
for me, I'm a slow reader. I'm
Well,
still
you should
trying
do
to get through.
Audible.
No, I do Audible. Yeah, I'm still trying to get through. Well, maybe that might be part of the problem, because if you're listening to the audiobook of Gone to See the Riverman, have you read that book?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's splatter.
Okay.
It's not shock for shock's sake. The shock has a purpose. I remember reading the reviews. They say that the main character has a turn in how sympathetic she is, like a really wild heel turn. I thought I was prepared. I was not prepared. It's uncomfortable. Yeah, and it's the kind of subject that ordinarily would make me put something down, but I can tell here that it's like it's supposed to mean something. It's not just shock. It's like the same reason, like ordinarily I'll put something down if it has sexual assault in it, but I was able to get through The Handmaid's Tale because I knew there was something, like a point it was trying to make. I get that feeling about Gone Through the Riverman, but oh man, and especially if it's an audiobook and someone's reading it out loud while you're trying to deliver flowers for your job. It's like, and I pulled up in somebody's driveway with this on, and I was like, I'm going to listen to something else for a while. So yeah, there's that. And then I'm reading How to Murder the Man of Your Dreams, which I found on the side of a road in a ghost town. It's a great book. It's a comedy, mystery thriller. But the main character is this woman named Ellie Haskell, who has this weird pathology that, like, she's so obsessed with romance books that her husband doesn't even turn her on anymore. She has to like read romance books in order to get her needs met. She's got this she's kind of a mess, and it was written in, I want to say, like the late 80s, and so there's a lot of like humor that's kind of dated. Like there's one where she says she like checks her watch, and the narration says her watch, which should have on several occasions been subjected to a lie detector test or a polygraph or something like that. And that's like only a joke that someone would tell in like the late 80s. So it's fascinating to me. I recently actually spoke about it on Kirsten Craig's Hey Book Pals podcast, but I found it on the side of a road in a ghost town.
Yeah, I was going to say, back up. Tell me about that part.
Oh, yeah. I was, so Arizona has a lot of ghost towns, and I wanted to go to this one called Jerome because it's a reborn ghost town, so people have started living there again. And so for my vacation, I went between there and Sedona, and when I went to Jerome, I saw a sign on the side of the road that said free books, like, like those yard sale signs, but just books. And it was in the back of their high school in like the woodshop class, and there was just books everywhere. And so I just took like 10 of them. And one of them was How to Murder the Man of Your Dreams, because I saw that title and I was like, well, I can't not read it. I got to read it. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing what you'll find if you just go to a used bookstore and like go to just a random section and kind of search around, find some interesting stuff. So
it also sounds like a trap when you put it like that.
Well, if they're free, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, no, definitely didn't have enough space in my car for that. I made space. It's fine. Anyway, enough about that weird story. I think that was all the questions on here, actually. So, I mean, how do you normally do this out? Tell everybody to watch Shark Side of the Moon?
In this case, yes. Hold on. I got to ask one person, Blaine. Tell everybody what you thought of Shark Side of the Moon. Would you recommend it to others?
You want to see something you haven't seen before?
Okay. All right. That's fair.
Yep.
So there it is, a glowing recommendation. If you want to see something you haven't seen before.
Yeah. If you want
normally
if you want an emotional journey like no other.
Yeah. I'm going to be coming up with fun memes for this one, though, because I haven't come up with the one I normally do for the week. I got to think about it.
I'll try and come up with some for it myself, too, for promotional purposes. But yeah, maybe that's how you end the podcast from now on. We'll see you on the Shark Side of the Moon. That's your tagline.
I'm done. Absolutely not. I just tell everyone to go watch the shitty stuff so we can talk about it. So in this case, you actually would be right. Go out and watch it and then call back in and talk about it, or
If you
find
watch
people
it,
on
please,
Instagram.
yeah, please leave a comment here on YouTube or on Insta or whatever. Tell us what you thought of it. Doesn't matter how long the comment is. I want to know all the details.
Mind blowing. That's all.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. That was something. That was something. So you actually have earned back one pick a new one right for the two of us.
Oh, okay.
It made up for the
Okay,
other
good.
one. That was totally worth it because I'm like still digesting. But anyway. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Bye.